Everybody, welcome to the platform.
Oh boy.
Oh dear. Let me have one of these.
Good start.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's early.
Have you got a cup of coffee?
Jesus.
My wife just dropped it off. Yeah.
Oh, good.
It's quite early for us.
Do you know what? Little mistakes make it real, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's perfect.
We're leaving this in. Let's just carry on.
Good.
Let's just carry on. Okay, everybody, welcome to Off the Platform. It's early morning here in New Zealand. Our special guest today is Naomi Sheppard. Naomi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Now, I don't do a whole lot of scrolling through Instagram. You leave that to Jackson, but I did this one time, and came across Naomi, and the tagline in the bio was #1 lifter or female lifter in the UK. That caught my attention, and I looked it up on Open Powerlifting, and it's very true. So congratulations, Naomi, for being #1 female powerlifter in the UK.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, for those who are wondering, and we can give a brief recap before Naomi goes into some detail around it. Naomi, you've only been on the scene since 2015.
Yes, I did. That's the first year I did my first competition. It's about 6 years now. I've been lifting for a lot longer than that. I wasn't brave enough and didn't do my first competition for quite a while. But once I did, I kind of just got hooked from there.
Cool. And it looks like your first competition was a respectable 327.5 kilo total.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 6 years, 587.5 kilo total. So to a jump.
Yes, put a lot on my total in that time.
Yeah, it's a little bit, 260 kilos in 6 years. So take us right back to the very beginning there. What's your history with strength sports and just sports or lifting in general?
So I started lifting about 11 years ago. I was at University of St Andrews in Scotland at the time, and I was doing my degree in biochemistry. But I picked up strength sports, lifting, because I had something as a teenager called Sever's disease. So it's basically where, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically I ended up with broken heel bones. And as I was growing, they would just break every time I had a bit of a growth spurt.
Wow.
I would have my legs put in plaster and they would heal. And then they would just break all over again every time I grew. So I think it probably stunted my growth a little bit as well, but that's made me a better lifter. So I'm not going to complain about that. And that was I was like age 10 up until about 16. That's when I kind of stopped growing. So I missed out on all sports. I wasn't allowed to play any sports. I mean, I was lucky if I was walking at that point. So
wow.
But by the time I got to university, obviously I'd missed out on that. And I'm quite a competitive person by nature. So I wanted to pick up sports, and I think I tried out for quite a few different ones, but I was so bad at all of them because I hadn't played them. I missed out on such a big chunk of that when I was growing up. So I actually got into a couple. I played korfball for the university. It's like Dutch basketball.
What's that? Yeah.
I mean, it's the net is much higher, so I'm not really sure why I played that because I'm so short. But it was new to everybody, so it was quite an easy one to get into. But then I decided to pick up a bit of lifting because I'd read so much about how it could make your bones denser. I didn't want to have problems later in life because the disorder itself is genetic. So I'd seen some of my uncles suffer as they got older with even just climbing up ladders and things. And I just didn't want to have any problems with my bones. So I kind of picked it up for that. But I also just really wanted to be stronger and fitter. I'd missed out so much growing up that I kind of wanted to change that. And I wanted to make myself better so that I could do a few more sports. But I picked it up and I just really liked it and really enjoyed it. So I kind of did it on my own for a couple of years. And then I decided that I wanted to learn more. So I started the UKSCA Strength and Conditioning qualification through the University Sports Centre. And through that, I kind of got a love for coaching as well. So that's where I met my husband, Tom. He's a coach too. And he also competes in powerlifting, which is cool. I actually started coaching the football team for the university and the women's rugby team for the university. So I kind of started out coaching at the same time. But obviously that just really helped me as a lifter because, you learn so much and then you start working with other people, you learn more. And then I kind of just did it as a bit of a hobby then for a few years because I actually went into research because I'd done a biochemistry degree and I kind of focused more on that for a while. But then me and my husband started a bit of a powerlifting team, and we then actually competed. But at that point I've been lifting for like five years, but it wasn't like consistent. Like it was a bit on and off. There were like periods where I didn't really do it very much for 6 months at a time. And but I trained for like a solid 6 to 9 months before my first competition. And then once I did that first one, I kind of haven't looked back since. So it's been a bit of a longer journey, I think, than most people. But the last 6 years has been a lot more consistent. And I'd say like the last 3, I've took it a lot more seriously. And I've literally just live and breathe powerlifting now. So it takes up my whole life. Beautiful. But I love it. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What part of England are you predominantly in?
So I'm in the Midlands. I live in a place called Leamington Spa, but I grew up in the north in Manchester, and I lived in Scotland for like 6 years as well.
Okay. And I see most of your competitions have been with either the BPU or the WPC.
Yeah, so my first competition was with the BPU. They were quite new. They'd only been running for about a year at that point, but the people running it had been part of lots of other federations, and they'd kind of come together. And they're just so lovely. And I think once you find a place and you just kind of feel at home, why would you,
No,
I
exactly.
just, and yeah, I just never really seen a reason to go anywhere else, I suppose. But I've really enjoyed it. And I've done a couple of pro competitions, but I think they've been affiliated to the WPC as well. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Yeah, I saw that the Irish Pro, and was it the Body Power one? Did that count as a pro comp as such, or no?
The only pro I've done is the Irish Pro.
The Irish Pro.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big comp. It's turned into a massive comp these days.
Yeah. I'm going to go again this year, but I mean, at the moment we're really restricted with travel because we just can't go anywhere. So, I mean, I was entered into the Kern US Open in 2020.
Yeah.
And also the Showdown in 2020. And I was also entered into them this year as well, but I couldn't go because I couldn't, even this year, like I applied for a special visa to travel as an athlete, and it just got denied. So I actually was preparing for the Kern this year. And I was waiting to find out if I could go, and I found out like 21 days before that I couldn't go. And obviously I was prepping for it. So I was like, oh no, I don't want all of this effort to go to waste. And I really just want to put up some updated numbers. It's been a while since I competed. So I just like found the earliest competition I could do, which was 2 weeks later from the Kern. And I just extended my prep, which was hard because 2 weeks doesn't sound like a long time, but 2 weeks of like heavy training.
Oh yeah. At the end of a prep, especially when you're already like deep in it like that, you're already stuffed.
Exactly. So like mentally that was challenging, but I mean, I managed to hit some good stuff and I'm happy with what I did. But obviously it wasn't quite the Kern, you're expecting to be with some of the best lifters in the world and like this massive competition. But the competition I did was great, and it was with the BPU who I started with, and they're just super lovely. So it was a good atmosphere, and yeah.
How do your and Jackson, you might know, how do your numbers compare? I haven't had a look, but how would your numbers compare if you had done the Kern with like the likes of Mariana?
For the overall?
Yeah.
I think it would have been just off the podium, maybe like top 5.
Top 5, yeah. Okay.
I think I might have been like 5th or 6th. I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say 5th or 6th because obviously Mariana's just that's. I mean, that's ludicrous. Like, that's a wild pretty one.
I mean, she's just amazing, right? Like, I remember the first time I saw her competing was like 2016, I think, or 2015. I was at an international in Portugal, and I watched her squat like 205 raw at the time. And at that point, I was just like, "What? Like,
what is that?"
I was just in amazement. And the craziest thing was that at the end, when she went up to get her medal, she was wearing these like amazing jeans, and I was just like, "Oh my God, your legs!" And they're in jeans and they look so good. I was just in awe of her. She's like one of my biggest inspirations. She's just, she just blows everyone else out of the water, right? So kind of sad to see her
retire,
kind of stepping down, but I get why she's, she's completely dominated for quite some time. So
yeah, is that that's your goal, to dominate?
Yeah.
I
think
I'm
going to try as hard as I can. I work damn hard, and I feel like, even though I've been doing it for a while, I feel like I'm really only just like scratching what I can really do now, like scratching the surface of what's possible. Like every time you do a competition, you just love it even more. And I think I'd kind of forgotten that feeling because it had been quite a while since I competed. And actually, when I did the Irish Pro, I had injured myself a month before it. So that performance, even though it was good, at the time wasn't anywhere, it wasn't what I wanted to hit. So that competition was a little bit disappointing. Also because I missed out on the first place by literally like a point. It wasn't even a kilo. But I think that competition made me work a lot harder because I was like, it means so much to me. I put so much of, my whole life evolves around competing and being a powerlifting athlete. So yeah, like this last competition, even though it was done on home turf and at a small competition, I'm like, okay, now I'm really, getting somewhere. But I've definitely got a lot more to give and a long way to go. So yeah.
I mean, looking at
sorry, I'm pretty sure it would have got a few people's attention. Have the guys doing the showdown got back in touch at all?
Yes, I'm entered into it, but I've already paid my entry, but I just don't think I'm going to be able to go just because of travel. Like, I don't think that by September we're going to be able to travel to the States. So it's difficult, right? Because I want to go to it, but do I take the risk and prepare again for a competition I can't do? It's tough. Like every prep that you do, it's like takes a lot out of you, and you want to make sure that it's actually going to go somewhere. But
and then, can you guys go to Ireland or no?
At the moment, yeah, we can. Yeah.
So when's the Irish Pro?
So it's around the same time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm kind of just keeping them both in mind, and I'm quite far away from them both still, but I'm just kind of building up from basics at the moment, working on technique again, and go from there. So, but yeah, it would be cool to be able to, because I mean, most of the people that competed at the Kern are also competing at the Showdown.
Yeah.
And I, like, as much as I love wraps, I'm better in sleeves, like as a competitor, because my best sleeve squat's like 230 and my best wrap squat's 255. So it's, there's a difference, but I think a lot of people get a much bigger difference in them.
Oh yeah.
But I just haven't had a lot of time in wraps. I've only done 2 preps in it. And it was really this last one that I was like, oh, I feel like I'm starting to get something out of them now.
This is what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think I've got a lot more to learn in wraps. There was a few people there watching me that I know well and have really good squatters. And they were just like, what? Like, you're getting like 5 or 6 revolutions out of something we get like 9 or 10 out of.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, tight wraps are a very like acquired taste.
Yeah. So I think my goal is to kind of build myself up to improving, my wrap technique and getting a little bit more out of them, especially now that I'm squatting the weight I am. I think it will help with the stability access, aspect as well. So yeah, I think I've got a bit more to give on squat. My goal is to squat 600 pounds. So I think that would be quite a cool milestone.
It's definitely, I mean, it's there.
Yeah. It's a couple of kilos. It was not far away, is it? So we're knocking on 255 at the moment, eh? So yeah, easily achievable with 3 more revolutions.
Yeah, there's 20 kilos straight away.
Yeah. But I definitely think my deadlift is the weakest out of my 3 lifts. It needs the most work. I felt like it underperformed at my last competition. So, I've kind of gone back to basics. I'm doing quite a bit of work on my deadlift at the moment. So hopefully I've got quite a bit more in that. So.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your numbers now, I mean, your squat numbers have risen, it was almost astronomically from like 125.
Literally double your starting squat.
125 to 255, but you're putting on 20 odd kilos, if not more, every competition onto your squat. Your bench has gone up steadily, 10 kilos at a time, give or take, largely. Yeah. And then your deadlift, you had that nemesis of 180 for a while, eh?
Oh, yeah. The annoying thing is, like, I injured my back on that number, so I think it just, where you get a number stuck in your head. And actually, when I managed to surpass that, and my goal was 200, I felt like I was chasing that for such a long time. But yeah, so hopefully now that I've kind of got past those, we'll see. Who knows?
Those milestone numbers are very hard, because you put them on a pedestal.
Exactly. And I think you almost feel a bit more nervous, like that's going to affect you. I try, do you know what? I think with social media now, you have access to so many like amazing lifters. So I always just watch like some of the best, like even Hunter Henderson, Chloe Lansing's deadlift is just insane. She's in my category. You got Christy Hawkins. Like there's just some amazing people, right? So I just watch lots of their stuff and I'm like, okay, like they're just deadlifting insane amounts. So I have to like watch it to kind of make myself think that the numbers I'm doing are not such a big deal, so that I work even harder and don't like mentally block myself off from doing more. I always like in myself, I always just have to aim really high, because otherwise I think you just automatically stop yourself from achieving your potential, right?
Yeah, you fall into a groove really quickly. How influential has been seeing some of the numbers on social media and sort of opening your eyes to see, hey, that is possible, or even seeing Mariana, squat 200.
I definitely think it's had a big influence on me. I have I run a powerlifting team, but in terms of like the gym I train at, I've trained out of my shed for the last year, so I can't even say I've trained in a gym. But like I train with my husband, and I train with a lot of like really strong guys, but I've not had the opportunity to really train with a lot of strong women. So I think actually it's kind of cool being able to see them through things like Instagram. So I definitely get inspiration from them. So
I guess it's one of those things. It's like the classic is the 4-minute mile. Like no one thought it could be done, and then one guy did it, and then all of a sudden
loads of people,
like 30 people did it.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's like you say, like you're showing yourself. You're like, right, well, she's in my category. If she can deadlift 250, why can't I?
Yeah.
Almost.
I definitely want to be one of those people though that's like doing things that people didn't think was possible. That's my goal, is to like do things that people think was possible, even just in my category, but overall. So I'm going to work my butt off until I can be one of those people.
What's the do you have any numbers in mind, or is it years of competing, or is it a total, or is it what is it that you want to achieve?
My ultimate goal is to be number 1 in the 67s, and be top 10 overall. In terms of numbers, like at the moment, like shorter term, I just want to break the 600 total barrier. At the moment, obviously no one's ever done that in the UK, female. I have the biggest total, but there's a few people kind of getting there now, so it would be cool to be the first, but we'll see. I'm not competing now till September, so there's a good chunk of time in between there, and it would be cool to see other women kind of reaching that benchmark within the country, in the UK. So short term I want to break the 600 barrier total. Longer term I want to squat 600 pounds plus. I would like to deadlift more than 220, 230-ish. I think that maybe that's a bit more realistic. My best competition deadlift is like 205, and bench at long term I want to hit 140. So 3-plate bench would be.
Yeah, I was going to say 3-plate, the gym bro bench.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's been a few years since I did a 2-plate bench, so in the gym, but it'd be nice to be able to hit 3-plate. That's the next goal. So yeah.
Naomi, did COVID hit you hard, or in terms of your training, or because you were training out of the shed? No real.
We were quite lucky. We moved into our house like 9 months or so before we got put into lockdown. And so we had kind of set up a temporary gym space we've sort of got like an outhouse at the bottom of our garden. It's more like a shed. It's like this little wooden building. It's bigger than a shed, but it's not massive. And we'd collected quite a few gym kit things along the way. So I basically just lived in the shed for the whole of last year because we were in lockdown 9 months.
Yeah.
Last year, like it was most of the year. And obviously, like my job now, so obviously I was a researcher for a few years, but I swapped over and I coach now, but I PT in a local gym, like it's called Nuffield Health. It's like a private healthcare gym. So I work with a lot of like rehab patients and ordinary PT people that just want to get fit. So it's quite a varied job. But obviously I couldn't do that because the gym was shut. So I basically just had more time to train. So for me, I just looked at the silver lining in that I had way more time. It made me realize actually how much, because I love to work hard. So even in my job, like I could work like 60 to 70 hours a week if I wanted to, because I love what I do. But it made me realize that was what that was taking away from pushing myself in the sport. So that was what I learned last year, because I was really able to push my training a lot harder, because it meant that the recovery was, I had the time for all the recovery and actually build from, you do the work in the sessions, but the biggest thing I learned last year was what happens outside of that is really also super important. So I put a lot of time and effort into all the recovery aspects. And it just, my numbers just shot up a lot more last year. I think that last year was like the biggest progress I've made, which is probably not what most people say, because, but I wouldn't say it's lucky, because obviously like we'd set up the gym for the purpose of it being there for our own use, but I'm just glad that I had that, because I don't know what I would have done without it. But yeah, in terms of like financials, obviously I wasn't working as much, but we were fine. You just manage, you just do what you can. But all the other parts were positive, I suppose, in terms of the sport. I really managed to get quite a lot out of the last year. The only sad thing is just not being able to see family. Like I'm quite a big family person. My family's quite large. Really close with Tom's family too. So that was tough. Like one of my sisters had a baby and I couldn't meet the new baby. Unfortunately, Tom's dad got really poorly, and that was tough because obviously at points we weren't even allowed to travel to see him. So those things were tough. But in terms of powerlifting, it was like the good thing.
Yeah, like you put like 85 kilos on your total, which is crazy.
So it's a really really good year. I say like it's probably not that much, just because that competition, the one I did before, I was injured. So I actually didn't train for like a month before that competition because I hurt my back in the gym doing a deadlift. It was 180 as well.
They're 180.
I know. I was doing it for a double and I felt something go, and then I basically had to be like carried home because I couldn't even put weight in my lower body. I ended up having to go to hospital because I couldn't like even stand. It was really bad.
Wow. What did they say it was? What happened?
Well, but I mean, things are so slow here, right? I had an X-ray and they said that nothing was broken, which I kind of knew anyway. And it wasn't anything super serious because it was just, so I ended up just like waiting to get an MRI, which took a while. But in the meantime, as soon as I could start moving, I was like doing as much as I could. I made myself a reverse hyper out of like some bands and a kettlebell. Like I used a really heavy kettlebell and like a box that you would do jumps on. So I was doing like just really light reverse hypers. I was doing like 200 a day. I was doing lots of pull-ups and dips. Basically anything I could do, I was doing it. I was getting myself to I couldn't even drive because I couldn't sit upright. So I was getting Tom to take me to the gym so that I could go and do things that I could do and move as much as possible. Because obviously I knew that was the best call, right? If I'd done something to one of my discs, to get it to kind of decompress and everything to kind of settle off. Because the main problem was that everything just went super tight. Yeah. So like my glutes were super tight. It was all the pain was in my lower back, but I think it was just stemmed from the fact that everything had kind of gone super rigid as like a protective mechanism. So yeah, it took me 2 weeks till I could body weight squat again. And then it took me another 2 weeks to work up to my opener so that I knew I could go. But I think having that goal, like I was like so determined that I was going to go to this competition that I was like, if I can even just go and like get my openers, I'll be happy because it's going to push me to work hard to get better as well. So I'm kind of glad that I had that deadline because I think maybe my recovery would have been slower. But by the time I got my MRI, everything was fine. So I really don't know what I did. I never got it confirmed, but since then I've had to do like a lot of rehab work on my core, my glutes to make sure everything's strong so that it doesn't happen again. But yeah, for like 6 months, I couldn't even sit in a chair upright. I had to sit on a Bose suit, like, a big Swiss ball. So I couldn't sit in chairs. Like, it was really uncomfortable. And that took ages to get rid of. But yeah, so that competition, like a month before, like 5 weeks before, I'd kind of tested where I was at. And I ended up hitting a lot less than that. But I mean, it's understandable, right? Like I didn't touch a deadlift until the day. And when I did deadlift, if you look at any of my videos, they're like super shaky. So I think my nervous system was just wrecked.
It was just like, stop doing this.
Oh, leave me alone, exactly. Leave me alone.
My last attempt was 182 and I got failed for hitching. But honestly, like, I swear it's just because I was shaking so much. Like, but that lift, I was so determined to get it. It's like the lift I'm most proud of, even though I didn't get it, because I worked so hard and it was like the hardest lift ever. But I didn't give up because if I'd got it, I was going to win. Right. So I was like, I cannot lose. I can't lose this deadlift. But their call was fair. Like, I always go with whatever the refs say. Like, they're the ones watching. You're doing the lifts. You don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, like it might feel a whole lot different to what it appears to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, obviously it was upsetting, but I totally respect their decision. I'd almost rather be judged harshly and know that my lifts are good, because if I'd won that on a lift that was like, ooh, I probably would have felt worse about it. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that I came second, because one, it made me work a whole lot damn harder.
Yeah.
And two, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. Like, I'm never going to leave it up to like this one lift, because that was the worst feeling. So yeah, I'm going to work damn hard to make sure that I'm not in that position.
Got a nice 30-40 kilo lead on second place next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends what competition you go to, right? I kind of want to be at the ones where you're going to be more challenged, because you're around like some of the best people in the world. And I think that would just make you work harder, because you're seeing, like this competition I went to, it was great. And I got what I kind of wanted. My goal was to put myself as number one in the country, which I got. But like the squat attempt before mine was like 120 or 130. So there was a big, because it was just a regional competition. So, there was big gaps between all the other lifters and then me, which is fine. I'm not, it was good to be around people. There were some people there doing their first competition, which is good, because I was kind of giving them tips and, it was nice. But I think it makes you work harder if you're around the people that are doing more than you.
Yeah,
definitely.
So I'd almost rather have gone to something like the Kern and come last.
Yeah.
Than like winning a competition that's small. But at the moment, it's just totally out of my hands. Like, there's no travel. That's the third competition now that I could have gone to that I haven't been able to in the States. So we'll see. Hopefully things start to kind of free up. And I'd really like to go to the Kern next year, but they've just made it like more exclusive. I don't know if you saw, but they posted something the other day that said they're only doing 2 flights on one day now. So I think they're just going to do a flight of women and a flight of men. And that's instead of 4 flights for women and 4 flights for men. So I was like, oh no, after all this time of like hoping to go.
Yeah, but to be fair,
to get there.
To be fair, she invites people on like formula score. So, if yours is still in that top 15, you'd be okay.
Yeah, I think overall I'm like 20th. So.
Okay.
So I'm like teetering on the edge. We'll see. But hopefully by September I can up that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we when we had a yarn to Gracie about it, I think she just got sick of people like. Obviously, yours was a legit reason, like you can't travel. But like previous years, she's just gotten sick of inviting people, and then they just fucking don't turn up.
Yeah, I mean, that can be like super frustrating, right? Because you're trying to plan a competition, especially like big competitions like that kind of rely on the lifters being there and the publicity, and people are watching. And I mean, any competition, right? People that just don't show up on the day is frustrating.
Oh yeah.
But
I mean, if you had 10 more like Wilk points on Naomi, you're already you're in the top 15 there. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so 613 is 15th place at the moment in the world for Wilks. So, and you're at 604 Wilks. So
yeah,
I don't know, what does Wilks translate to in terms of kilos? Is it like 1.3 to every kilo or something? Or
it depends on your weight class, because the coefficient's different.
The coefficients, yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay.
But I mean, once you break that 600, I would assume that's probably close.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 600, 610, you'd be there.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Hopefully in September I can push myself up a few places.
I saw on your Instagram that so I used to be a big fan when I was younger growing up. When I first got into lifting was when like forums became a big thing, like bodybuilding.com, T-Nation, etc. So I see that you're coached by, I don't want to try and muddle up his name, but Christian Thibodeau.
Yeah, he's a Canadian guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I didn't realize that he actually coached powerlifters. I thought he was more into like weightlifting and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he's not really worked with powerlifters before, so I think it's a little bit newer to him, but like his ideas and the way he does things really translates over. And I used a lot of his methods in my training leading up to even before I started having coaching with him. So like my husband Tom has always coached me, because even though I coach myself, I think it's almost better to have someone else coach you. Just take yourself out of the equation and just do what you're told. It's just easier. But so he started working for Christian Thibodeau, I think like just a few months ago, but I started working with him like last year, basically when we went into lockdown. And he'd been coaching my husband Tom for a while, and I'd seen what he'd been doing with him. In fact, the first thing he did was he just got me to follow Tom's program just to see how I'd respond. But like his style of training is so much more hardcore than I can handle. So I think I did it for like 2 weeks and then I completely crashed. I couldn't even squat 140. Like I just kept failing it. So he was like, okay, have a week off and we'll do something different.
Can you share a little bit of that training style or that training technique?
Well, I mean, what my husband Tom is just a lot. It's just a lot more heavy. He's pushing it, the heavy training a lot more. The volume is kind of lower, but it's much heavier. I basically think I benefit from, like, obviously you have to push the weight up when you're prepping for competition, right? But outside of that, I benefit from keeping it quite light and really focusing on using what he calls the omni contraction method. So you do like slow eccentrics, pauses in the eccentric. We use isometrics, but obviously that limits the amount of weight that you use quite a lot. So, but it's a good method because you still can improve your strength and, focus on weak points within the movement. So you can change where you put the pauses, change where you use the isometrics. So it's like kind of a total different style of training in the fact that I'm not doing super heavy stuff, so I can recover from it a lot easier. So I think the difference between me and Tom is that he can recover really easily from pretty neurologically demanding training, but he doesn't recover well from more like muscular driven training, more like bodybuilding style, like higher reps, lower weight. Whereas I'm the complete opposite. So anything that's super neurologically demanding, deadlifts, heavy deadlifts, I don't recover well from them. So even when I'm prepping for competition, I tend to only, push them in a very limited capacity, just because I found that my recovery isn't so good with that type of training. Does that answer your question, I guess?
Yeah.
Jackson, sorry, I was going to say that's cool. So you guys actually, do you do a lot of you do a lot of pause work and tempo work to sort of spend more time where you're weaker? Do you do do you involve a lot of like speed work in that as well, or no?
So like deadlifts at the moment, for example, I'm doing like an overload movement. So actually, because I'm working on my technique, I've put my feet a little bit wider. He's got me doing like speed deadlifts with like 120, so it's light. But he's also making me do something called a heel drive before I do it, just to make me use my legs a little bit more. And then, so I suppose that's, pretty light speed work. I mean, I tend to do like 3 different variations of the movement a week. So I'll do like a lighter day, which is more speed work. And then I'll do like pauses. So it's also not going to be super heavy. And then I'll have a day where I'll do like 5 by 5. So it's a bit heavier, but obviously at the moment I'm not, I've got like 13 weeks before I compete. So I'm doing some decent weight, but it'll slowly push up.
So does it center all around variations of the 3, or do you do like bodybuilding days as well, like a shoulder press, side raises, pull downs?
It's interesting because I used to do a lot more bodybuilding. So when Tom used to coach me, I really benefited from, I spent a good like 2 or 3 years really like hammering in bodybuilding and growing as big as I could. So the goal was to like build muscle size, and that massively helped. But since I started working with Christian more specifically, that's gone. Like I obviously do like accessory work, but the majority of my training is just variations of the 3,
right?
Squat, bench, deadlift. So it's a lot more focused now, which I think has obviously helped for the sport itself. So in terms of competing, that's what I'm competing in. So it makes sense to be a bit more honed in on it. And actually the gains I've made from doing that's been quite big. But I think having the foundation that I built before that and all the different styles of training, like having bodybuilding in was always obviously going to be beneficial because it's got me to where I am. It's just that
100%.
what I'm doing right now is better for me now, if that makes sense.
100%.
So I think if I trained like this always, it might have been different. So I think I had a really good foundation. Obviously we all have weak points, like my core, my glutes, my hamstrings are my weak points. So I have accessory work to work on those. But like before I would have like a legs day, chest day, I'd have that sort of built in, but with the powerlifting movements built in within that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've definitely gone through periods where bodybuilding's been a big part of my training, but in the last year it's been really specific. So yeah, I think it's different. I mean, his style of training, he uses a system based on so like he puts people into different categories based on their brains and the way they work. And so like I was saying about like me and Tom, we're kind of 2 sides of the spectrum in that I benefit a lot from more muscular type training, more like bodybuilding stuff. That's why I've benefited from it so much in the past. Whereas Tom benefits from more nervous system driven training. So I think he kind of works on a bit of a spectrum with that. So yeah, I've learned a lot from him and he's a really cool guy. But yeah, I don't think he's really worked with powerlifters before. So
yeah, that's cool though that it's worked so well. I think that like what you're saying about having that base, I think we've talked about this before, especially because like that's basically how I've always trained as well for the most part. A lot of hypertrophy work because I mean all the best powerlifters in the world are jacked. Like
exactly, yeah.
So I mean muscle moves weight, otherwise there wouldn't be weight classes.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think I definitely agree that like what you're doing now is sweet, but that building that base first. 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of people miss that.
I definitely agree. Like I see a lot of other people, especially in like this country, just really focusing on just the movements and doing them heavy a lot. Whereas actually that's kind of like, I mean, you're at that point, you should do that to kind of showcase all the other work that you've done to actually build them to be better. So there's all this like, like people might look at what I've done in the last year and be like, that's what we should do. But actually all the other stuff that came before that's got me to where I am, so you're right. Like it
Greg,
depends
can we just like box this and like send this out to people? This is like the message I've been trying to fucking hound people with forever.
Yeah.
But so you said that in the last sort of year or so, you've also focused more on like the stuff outside of the gym. So is that in terms of like nutrition or sleep or recovery methods?
Yeah, I mean, all of that really, like I do quite a few different things now for recovery. Nutrition has kind of been, nutrition and sleep I've focused on quite a lot for the last like 3-4 years, just because I think they impact your training so much. And especially nutrition, I mean, if you're not doing those things right, then you shouldn't be doing anything else. Like those are the two main things that are going to have the biggest impact, right? So I make sure I get like 9 to 10 hours sleep every night. My nutrition has always been really good, but the last like year and a half I've been working with Stefan Orbe, he works for Christian Thibodeau as well. So it's the three of them, Tom, my husband, Christian and Stefan. So I actually get all three of their help. I'm quite lucky in that I have three people helping me.
That's awesome.
I think being married to one of them probably is helps.
Well, yeah, one's a given.
Yeah.
But yeah, so outside of that, like now I use hot baths. I usually have at least one, sometimes 2 a day. I found those really beneficial.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, even in the summer, right, at the moment, we're having a bit of a heat wave and I still have my hot bath.
Because I guess it's cheap in the UK.
Probably, yeah. No, it's probably not anywhere near what you guys go through, but yeah, like, and then
is
other
that, is it the hot bath? Do you put anything in it, Naomi, or is it Epsom salts or something, or is it just standard hot bath?
Yeah, so I use magnesium salts.
Magnesium, yep.
And I think a lot of people call them Epsom salts, right? But I just buy like a massive tub of them and they don't. No. So I think, I buy a big order at a time. And then I use like, you can get like Radox bubble bath, but they like specific, right? But there's a brand, right, that we have in the UK. But they do like really nice, they've got like other things in like salts and stuff. So I use those just because they're good and they make it feel like it's a bit more relaxing as well.
Jackson, I know we've talked about this before, the sort of the therapies that different athletes will utilize, like post-training, post-comp, and you've talked about, like Jackson's talked about his time doing cryotherapy in the UK.
That's cool. I've never tried that, but I've heard some good things about it.
Yeah, and I don't know what the science says behind it, but obviously it can be a lot more effective than other forms of therapy as well. Jackson, what else have you tried?
I mean, I'm a big fan of like the contrast, so like hot cold.
Okay. So how do you do that? What do you do?
So actually, here in Christchurch, I mean, you can do it at home if you have like a hot shower, and then like I've filled the bathtub. Just go down to like the supermarket and buy some bags of ice.
Yeah.
And then just fill the bathtub with ice and go between the shower and the bathtub.
I don't think that's going to work for Naomi.
No, she wants the hot bath. So
yeah. Don't make a bubble bath and add ice.
I suppose you could fill it like a big bin.
Yeah,
probably fit in one anyway.
Yeah, in down here in Christchurch, we have this place that has it set up like purposely for that. So they have an infrared sauna. It's a little one. It's like 2 people, but it goes to like 70 degrees, and then they have a plunge pool set up beside it that's 4 degrees. And so that
I've read a lot of stuff about how like good that is for your recovery, but like, man, that must build some like mental toughness. Is that something legit. That you do yourself? Like
my best, I've got a PB for it. My best time in the cold water is 7.5 minutes.
Wow.
Shit. 7.5 minutes insane. In ice cold water.
Yeah.
You mad.
Oh. What were you thinking about?
Nothing. I was trying to just blank it out.
Survival.
Survival. That's insane. So how often do you do that?
Well, like, so when I was prepping for comp, I was doing it like twice a week. On my rest days, because like it wipes you out.
Yeah. Like it makes you really tired.
Yeah. So like I would do it sort of on my rest days, which were always the day before a squat or a deadlift session.
Oh wow.
So like nervous system wise, it was pretty crazy. So I'd always walk into a session fresh as.
Wow.
I think it's a neglected part of powerlifting training, isn't it?
Because I mean it's been used in like specific sports like for a long time, right? So it's not exactly a new method, but it's not one that you often hear powerlifters doing. It's definitely something I'm going to try though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
know if I could beat your PB though. That's a long time in the ice.
It was.
Come on, Naomi. 7.5 minutes. You can do it.
Yeah.
7 minutes.
That's
35.
it. I've got a challenge now. Yeah. Now that you've said something, I'm going to have to try and beat it.
Yeah, you did 7 minutes 35. You're number 1 in the world.
If you can do, because I know that cryotherapy. When I lived in the UK for like 2.5 years.
I didn't know that. When was that?
Probably. Between 2016 and 2018.
What happened in 2018?
What are you talking about, Greg?
So Jackson's also London's strongest man, 2018.
Wow, I did not know that. That's the coolest thing. So you were based in London. That's so cool.
So we moved over and we were based in London, and I just trained, like coached people, trained people, and then we just traveled and stuff. But so I tried some strongman. I trained with Dave BD.
It is so modest. Tried some strongman.
I just tried it and won it.
Yeah. I trained with Dave down in London.
Yeah.
And I wanted to enter the novice, and he said, "No one gives a fuck if you win the novice, bro. Go in the open." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair."
I bet you were so glad that you did.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I would the novice would have been stupid. I would have ended up doing like a 20 rep set of stones or something as well, which would have been disgusting.
That's funny. Wow, that's so cool.
Cryotherapy is pretty big. I don't know if you guys have it like where you are, but it was massive in London.
Yeah, not so much. I think most things that are in London don't always make their way up the country.
Yeah, true.
So actually, maybe there is, but I don't know of anywhere near me that's got it. But I mean, London's not too far, so I can always look into it.
So it's effectively a stand-up tanning bed that your head sort of pops out the top of, and they fill the outside with they fill the tank basically with liquid nitrogen. Obviously, you're not in it; you're in like an enclosed space, but it has holes.
Scary stuff to work with, that though.
The what? Sorry.
I said that stuff is really scary. I used to have to work with it, and it's like,
it's pretty cold. It gets down to like minus 140.
Whoa! So how long would you go in it for?
So the max they would let me do was 3.5 minutes.
So it's really not that long. You were like, come on, I could do more.
Yeah, I was like, let me do it. I can't feel my hands, but let me do it.
So would you do that on your rest days as well? So like you would with the cold plunge?
So I think the thing with cold therapy that I always found interesting is that if you do strictly cold, you can do it. So a lot of sports that train twice a day use it in between sessions to get rid of inflammation.
Yeah.
So I could do that in the morning and then be training in the afternoon. I would typically still do it on my rest day, but it's not as taxing as the hot cold,
right?
For some reason, which was odd.
Okay.
What would the difference be if you were just doing cold only? Because if cold's getting rid of inflammation, what's the hot doing?
Yeah.
The hot is, it almost makes the cold feel colder, for one.
It's like more of a shock to your system.
Yeah, so you get more cold shock proteins eventually, which then helps get rid of inflammation. But also then the hot then also increases blood flow. So you're basically getting from the cold, getting all the benefits of the cold, and then the hot circulation it out to all, like literally every muscle in your body.
Yeah.
So if you were doing like when you did hot cold, like how long would you spend in both? And would you just do it once or would you do it a couple of times?
So when I went to, so I would usually do about an hour and you sort of rotate between the two. So you do about 10, 12 minutes in the hot and then back in the cold. And then the usual, that 7.5 was like, I was just like, I just want to see what I can do. But usually it would be a couple of minutes.
Okay. So really not long in the cold.
No.
So you'd be okay. That's the really hard bit though, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How effective is it in injury prevention? Or is it more just a standard recovery, I guess, which by default would be injury prevention, wouldn't it?
The thing with that is that if you think about going from into the hot and then the cold and then back into the hot and that increased blood flow, you think about how little blood flow tendons and stuff get.
That's true.
So it's increasing the blood flow to those. So your recovery, you know what I mean? So like I didn't have any niggles.
Wow.
So which is,
said no powerlifter ever. So that's brilliant.
Maybe you've cracked the code.
Yeah, you have, mate. You have.
That's it. You've cracked it.
Writing down exactly.
Yeah, but
I'm definitely writing all this down. This is something I've never tried, so I'd love to give it a go.
Yeah, have a crack.
I'm not sure how I'm going to set it up, but I'll come up with something.
There you go.
I've seen a lot of the boys get like those big sort of 44-gallon drums and just do it in those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But
something like that.
Yeah, have a crack and see how you go.
Because I've seen your mate Dave Beatty Jackson. He's out in outdoors in some sort of ice bath, or does he jump in the ocean?
Oh, I'm not sure, because I think he is based near the coast, isn't he? So, I mean, it's cold. The ocean's cold enough.
So that one, I think the video that you saw, Greg, was when they had that real cold snap, and he's got a little pool out the front, and it was iced over.
Oh yeah. So that's the video I'm talking about. Yeah.
And he was just like,
I'm gonna look. I don't think I've seen that. I'm definitely gonna look that up.
Oh,
it's good. If you want to see like a 5'4", like 150 kilo man in speedos, go for it. Go have a look.
Yeah. You don't have to say anything about that, Naomi. Just do it. Just watch it quietly. Don't tell anyone. Don't share it with your friends. Yeah.
No, he's great. He's a hard ass. He is a hard ass.
Yeah, definitely.
So Naomi, your coaching, tell us about your coaching as well. Like, so you're obviously being coached by some of the best in the world. Do you you passing some of that technique along, or you developing your own sort of theories?
I mean, you definitely learn from your own stuff, right? But I mean, I use a lot of Christian Thibodeau's methods anyway before I started working with him, and I've learned a lot from him. I mean, it's difficult to say where you get it from, right? Because you just pull information from everywhere, and I'm constantly trying to learn. I mean, I started out just reading articles on T Nation, websites like Elite FTS. Stronger by Science is a good one. You know, there's loads of different places. I think because I have a science background, you know, I worked as a researcher for a few years. So I like to read a lot of science-based stuff, lots of research papers. And so kind of always looking to learn more. In terms of my own coaching, obviously it started out when I was coaching sports teams at university. I kind of had a bit of a break for a while when I was focusing more on research. Obviously I loved being a researcher, but I ended up giving it up just because it's so like powerlifting is for me now. Research was so it engulfed my whole life. Like, you can never switch off from your research because you're in charge of the work that you're doing and no one's telling you what to do. So you can never really switch off and leave it in the lab. Like, it would always come home with me, and I loved the work, but it was I was sort of struggling with the two passions. I loved helping people with their health and fitness, and I loved powerlifting and coaching, but I couldn't really give it any of my time because it was so consumed in research. So I ended up just giving research up a few years ago. And then I started working for Nuffield Health. So in the UK, they're a private healthcare company, obviously. So they're a not-for-profit company. So there's a lot of different projects that they do. But the main one is to kind of get the nation healthier and fitter. But because they run hospitals as well, there's a lot of connection with people that have had hip and knee replacements and, have experienced cancer and have had surgeries and things removed. And so I work with a lot of people that have been through some pretty tough stuff. So it's not, I coach powerlifting, but it's just a little part of what I do in my job. I just work with a lot of people that want to get fitter and stronger. So not necessarily for competing. And then I have this more sports specific coaching myself. But so it's quite mixed, my job. It's not a typical powerlifting coach because I do quite a bit more than that. But obviously my main passion is powerlifting. So I've found that over time, I just end up doing more and more of that. But strength coaching in general, I've started working with a few younger athletes now that are kind of trying to get better in their sports, whether it's swimming or running or and I quite like that because it's challenging in a different way. So yeah, I like to keep it quite varied, but I'd say in the last year, I've worked a lot less than I used to. I think just because I've wanted to put a bit more focus on myself. It's not a long-term thing, but I went from working 60 hours a week to 30.
Oh, wow.
So nice. I kind of halved it. I mean, it's probably more like a normal job, right? But it's quite hard because I basically just don't look for work, but I do the work that comes to me.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not my plan, because long term I kind of want to put myself out there and coach a lot more people. I've started doing a lot more online work now as well, which is quite cool. I'm just doing online programming. I will always keep an aspect of one-to-one because I like working with people specifically. And I think I enjoy the technical side of lifting more than just getting people stronger. you know, so I actually, the thing I find most rewarding is actually helping people that have like, you know, struggled with something. Like, for example, I'm working with a lady at the moment who was struggling to even just walk down the road because she was having such problems with her knees and hips. And she was getting advice to get hip and knee replacements and I was just like, just work with me, we'll get you stronger. Like, I knew that it was just, you know, she had like chronic tightness from sitting so much, and it just got so bad over a long period of time, but we've managed to alleviate a lot of the pain. You know, she goes out on long walks now, like things that she was struggling to walk upstairs, and she's not, you know, she's not an older lady, she's still quite young. So like, I find that more rewarding at the moment. So
yeah, no,
I don't want to give that one-to-one up, because being able to just help people, you know, live day-to-day life is quite a big thing. But obviously I love pushing people to their limit because it's something that I really enjoy. So being able to share that with other people, like I remember writing down my long-term, like my lifetime goals when I first started lifting, and they were 100 squat, 60 bench, and 120 deadlift. And I mean, now when I think about that, I'm just like, what? Like, I mean, I've more than doubled the squat and bench. Like, if you told me a few years ago that that's what I was going to be lifting, like, I wouldn't have believed you. So I like pushed way past what I even thought was possible. And obviously now with like social media and stuff, like when I first started lifting, women weren't even really in the weights room over here. It was still really uncommon. Like, I used to get people asking me if I was like lost, if I needed help, like, and like that was the case for a few years. Like, most gyms, if you went to the weights room as a woman, you were like,
yeah,
are you okay?
Yeah, you're looking for someone.
Yeah.
Whereas like now it's a lot easier, I think, because it's become a lot more popular. You've got that kind of social media presence where you can see people doing those things. So I think it's kind of nice. Like, but I don't feel bad that when I started, I didn't have those things. Like, it's just made me who I am. But I think it's nice for people now because they can see, actually, like, if you really want something, you just got to do the hard work and you can get it. And actually anything is possible. So, you know, that's why I tried to not set myself limits. In fact, sometimes I say to my own powerlifting team, you know, like, you need to set a goal, something that you kind of laugh at a little bit, that you just think, whoa, and then that's what you're going to go for. So yeah, like, I mean, it's just, you know, sensible to set short-term goals, but long-term ones, I like to get people to aim high because it stops them from setting their own barriers. So yeah, like I feel like I like to do a few different things, but, you know, I always feel torn, like, but they've all got the same basis, right? Strength and conditioning. So
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Sorry, just totally rambled.
No, that was brilliant. That was brilliant. And I was thinking 1,000 things during it as well. I mean, obviously the rise of the social media, we often bag it, but it's been inspirational in the sense that you get to see people like you and achieving all sorts of things. And whether it be, helping women just live a better life, or, you know, is really admirable. And obviously people setting their own limits, it's taken into context when they see other women achieving a lot more and thinking, actually, maybe I need to reset my goals. Yeah, maybe my goals. Yeah, look, this is obviously achievable, but long term, I could do a whole lot more.
Yeah,
and I think people are really fighting and they're struggling to do a lot better than they would have done otherwise.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives to it. Obviously, you could focus on the negatives, but I just think always focus on the positives, and that's good.
Awesome. Naomi, thank you so much for coming on today. When are we going to see you? When are we going to see you again on the platform? You mentioned 13 weeks. What's that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of at the moment focusing a little bit more on probably doing the Irish Pro, just because I think realistically, I'm still not going to be able to travel as much as I'd love to do the showdown. So I've not said that I'm not going to do it, because at the moment I'm kind of just focusing on weaknesses and building. So we'll see. Like, it's in September for definite.
Yeah. If you would have had your 2 COVID shots?
Well, already? I've not had any yet.
Oh wow! Okay, I thought the UK was like more than halfway through.
They've vaccinated most people, but they've only made it down to people that are 31 and over so far. So So I'm soon, right? Because I'm 29, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be soon. Yeah, so hopefully I should get my first one in the next few weeks, and then by then I should have had my second as well. So because
we're assuming, I'm assuming anyway, that there's going to be a requirement, to be vaccinated before international travel to some countries is allowed.
I mean, it definitely makes sense, and I think that would be a good decision.
Yeah, and potentially that by September, look, fingers crossed, because we'd love to see you at the showdown.
Hopefully.
But otherwise, Irish Pro this year, and then potentially, you could do the hybrid, or the showdown, or the Kern next year.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to get myself on a bigger platform. That's what I've always wanted to do. Like get myself to those really big competitions that everybody watches. It's been tough the last couple of years not actually being able to go. So
yeah, and those are the sort of platforms where people go, wow, there's some new faces on here. Who are they? Brilliant.
Yeah, people are probably going to be like, who is this person? Where did they come from?
Exactly.
Well, hopefully.
Exactly.
I mean, have you? I don't know if you've seen. You probably have, but about the because do you usually weigh like actually in the 67s, or do you usually cut in?
So I usually do. Well, usually, I've always just been in the 67s. In fact, most of the time I was more like 63, 64, but just stayed in the 67s.
Yeah.
But like last year, at my heaviest, I managed to get up to like 76.
Nice.
Nice.
But
heavyweight.
I mean,
yeah, triple C pick.
Well, I just obviously last year not working as much, I wasn't moving as much, but my goal was to get as big as I could, like put on as much size as possible. And I really kind of went crazy with that, but I trimmed back down. So I'm around 70. So I do a little bit of a cut in.
Oh yeah, nice. I was going to say, because there's Wildcats over in Aussie.
They
do the under 75s as like their most competitive class. And that's on a 2-hour weigh-in though.
Yeah. I mean, it's under 75s, right? So I'm around 70. That would be fine.
That's why I was asking.
That's like another competition that everybody watches that you just like, whoa.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest problem is that I don't really use social media that much. Like I post my training on it, but I don't have a massive following. And I think big competitions, they find people based on how popular they are rather than
100%.
just their scoring on open powerlifting. So for me, like that's quite a big piece of the puzzle missing. That's going to help me get to that big stage.
Yeah. I don't think Gracie doesn't use a lot of the social media either. So
no, we had that. She said that. She said that there was this girl that she invited who wasn't as strong as the others, but she had like nearly 1 million followers. So she was like, "Yep, you can come."
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I get why they do it, right? It's publicity for their competition, and those competitions need to make money.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they charge a door fee, so they need to try and make their money back. So they
want people to come. They want people to watch it. It gets them the sponsorship, which brings the money in to pay out. Like I understand why they do it, and it's like, I mean, it's a tough decision, and really you should have the best people there. But I understand why.
Yeah, you can definitely.
So it's difficult being like, I'm getting to the point where I'm like a little bit more up there, but not at the top. But I'm completely unknown. So I think like
not after being on this episode.
I know.
Yeah.
It's all made.
When you asked me, I was like,
yeah.
No, I'm really honored to be on. So hopefully this should help. But yeah, like my goal is to get myself on bigger platforms and compete with like insane lifters and the best people in the world. So whether that's in Australia or the States or I want to travel and put myself in that more difficult position, because I think that's going to make me a better lifter long term. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so watch the space, I guess.
Watch the space. Brilliant. All right, Naomi, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. All the best for the future, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I was going to say, speaking of, to help with, what's Shameless Plugs? How do people?
Sorry. Shameless Plugs. Yeah, how do we find you? How do people find you? My bad.
So I use Instagram. My handle is naomi.phoenixperformance.
That's done.
That's all you need.
Yeah, nice. That's it. I use Facebook, but not really.
Yeah,
who does?
Just Instagram.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, Naomi, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, see you later.
See ya.